Hi, Support Fibro friends. Sorry for the delay. I got lost in my research as it is. Today's topic for everyone is talking about the NIH Research Funding, so the National Institute of Health and their funding for fibromyalgia. And this is something I love to look at, and obviously research areas have been a big interest of mine for a long time because of the science behind it. So when I started to learn quite a bit more in the last few years and trying to figure out what is going on with research for fibromyalgia, where is the funding for it going, and what else is happening, where can we fill in the gaps? Because that was the one thing that we talked about when we created Support Fibro and we decided to become a nonprofit in 2017 was our goal was to fill in the gaps for fibromyalgia. And this was something big on my radar as far as research goes. I knew that was going to be sort of another phase of the organization because there's barriers to research. It's very costly to get it completed, and you have to understand how to file for the grant and awards that are given at this, or you can fundraise on your own and provide private funding to other researchers. But it takes a lot of time to learn the strategy and to implement it. So we knew that was there, but what is currently going on? And this is a big deal because we need research to back up what is happening. We need more research to understand what is going on with fibromyalgia, what are the causes. And for a long time, I've been volunteering my time in the fibromyalgia community since 2003. And I've seen people say, we're fundraising for research, we need the cure, right? And this has been repeated for a long time. But what I didn't know, and I was remiss to asking, is what kind of research have we been funding? Where is the funding going? And yes, we need a cure, but do we understand everything that we need to get us to the point of looking for cures and treatments that we talk about and hear about? Is there research behind it so that we can teach our medical providers about this and the things? Because we all see it. Like, a lot of us say and give advice on what's helped us with our own fibromyalgia journey. So now it's time to really, if you are really die hard about a certain treatment area, let's put the research behind it, because this way we will be able to give that information to the doctors through continuing medical education credits. We'll be able to back up those findings with larger scaled studies so that we can implement this for our patient community and make it widespread. So it's not so limited on just seeing it on social media and whether you get that information or not. So that's the big deal with research, and it comes into play with training our doctors. It's going to come into play just with treatment modalities. So I do encourage you, if you are really diehard about a certain treatment protocol, please join the fight with actually getting some of the data and research behind it so that we can carry it forward. And I've had these conversations with other people who are diehard about nutrition. Strongly believe nutrition is a factor with fibromyalgia. Okay, so let's get the research to go behind it. Let's go be able to get that research so we can train medical providers, or even have other organizations put the funding behind it for fibromyalgia. And let's show that there is a dietary connection, if that is something that's there. And let's go through the information. Let's follow it up with the science and go from there. So I encourage all of you to get involved, and this is what these videos are about. It's having a healthy discussion about research categories, what we can do to move the community forward. We have to move forward. Right now it feels like we're really stuck, or we got stuck back in 2013, and we really need to move our community forward. So what is it going to take? When we have these discussions about research, let's have healthy discussions on what's missing. But in order to understand what's missing, you have to dig into the information. So that's what I'm going to start sharing with you today, especially when it comes to the NIH and how we can move from there and what we keep learning as going to Capitol Hill each time. So it's important to get the understanding and the background of it. Now, again, it was like I kept learning of what we needed, and this is like a special shout out to Court Johnson, actually, and I'm going to share, I should have put this screenshot in first, but I had come across a blog posting of how fibromyalgia had become the worst sort of funded disease at the NIH. And his blog really sparked a lot for me. And I'm going to include the link for you so that you can read along if you're interested, or just reference the post later. So shout out to him for actually writing this. And this was in 2015. So the title is How Fibromyalgia Got to Be the Worst Funded Disease at the NIH. And I went through this blog post, and I was reading up on all the other content that he provided. And I'm going to remove that and try to add it to the screen to just kind of go along and share that with you a little bit so that you can kind of get where I got started. And he has some other great blogs, which I recommend for Health Rising blog, and his team has put together some great stuff. So please take a look at that. Here is some of the information. So this is the blog post, How Fibromyalgia Got to Be the Worst Funded Disease at the NIH. It was written in 2015. So I went through this and I went through the history. He goes through the history of advocacy and what's going on with the NIH, the links to the studies. So I really dug into what that was. It just goes back and forth. And I was like, wow, this stuff was really happening. And I felt like I was a little bit unaware, or how could I have gotten involved at this time, because I was super interested. I've always been super interested in research and believed in research and science, and trying to figure out what was happening with fibromyalgia. Like, why personally at that time, I was like, why did my body go kaput at the age of 14? And I really wanted to understand the mechanisms and the science behind it. So this blog itself sort of, and this paragraph with the advocacy gap is what something really sparked us at Support Fibro to understand what was missing. And I felt like he was kind of calling out the fibromyalgia community, that we have this advocacy gap and we need to have people come together. And he did talk about sort of where pain was, and with the National Pain Strategy in 2013. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, and to see where we're at. Because remember, this is written in 2015. So, in 2020, we've progressed in a different way. But he's really saying that we need advocacy, and we need a constant push, and we need a commitment from the NIH to really look at fibromyalgia. So, and he provided a bunch of links, which was something that was interesting to me. So I did all this research. I looked at everything at the NIH that was currently funded. So I really started to dig into all of that. And that's what kind of sparked a lot of the information that we were able to provide when we went to Capitol Hill. So here is the actual report from the NIH. These are estimates of funding for various research conditions and disease categories. This is not a competition among diseases, but I wanted to point this out to just break down where fibromyalgia is in comparison to other diseases and where funding is. Because there is spending on chronic pain. There is spending on cannabidiol research, because I've seen people post comments like they need to do more research on cannabis. There is a separate category for that. There's a separate category for chronic pain research. There's a lot, actually. Opioid research itself, they're spending a lot of money on that research. So I invite all of you to take a look at this page. And I'm going to include the link here, because it's really important to understand this. I mean, if you're diehard about finding the cure, we have to start with what is currently being researched. And I've put the link in the description already, and I've shared this link as well. I apologize if there is an error when it comes to sharing. So I hope, and I'll make sure to go through and keep sharing the link with people. But it's good to take a look at the estimated funding. So this has been a requirement from Congress on the NIH, because they need to provide consistency and transparency in the reporting of where funding of research goes. So I thought that was an excellent point, and something that they put together for all of us. And so we can break down the different categories of research. And there's this fiscal year. So these are the fiscal years of how much the research dollars spent in millions were in the breakdown. And you can see this. And so you can go through this chart, and then you can click on some of the highlighted regions. Let me make this larger. But some of this is you can see the mouse moving, that you can click on the numbers and it'll actually take you to some of the research that's taking place. I hope you can see some of this, but you can see how the numbers differ, and we'll get down. You can just search for fibromyalgia as well, and it'll just it'll pop up with you. So of course, I've been researching fibromyalgia, so it's already good in the search terms, but we can see sort of the estimated funding here. So fiscal year of 2016, we have 11 million. 2017, it went up to 14 million. So I've been dissecting the reasons why. So these are the actual numbers. And then 18, it's 14 million. But now 2019, 13, it was actually estimated last year to go down to 12. So I'm glad we did not see that decrease. So we kept that extra million there. Fiscal year 2020, 13, but this 20, they keep wanting to take it down to 12, and I'm not quite sure. I'm glad that there's been added a mortality rate. That was one of the things that we started to try to dig research for and to give our representatives. So I'm glad that's been added in there, because there was no differential when it came to that. And so just to see what happens here, I'm going to click on this so you can see some of the spending reports. Okay, cool, it worked. And within this, so you can click on one of the numbers, so of the years, and you can see where the funding is going. And the project numbers, if you actually click on some of these, it'll open up to the actual abstract of the research itself. So you can learn more about where the research is, specifically what are they doing. I mean, this is the high level project titles. The other side is funding, is the different branches. So if it's coming from the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, is the funding coming from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders? So this is things, the branches within the NIH. So it's important to take a look at that and find out who's spending money. And you can go through this list and see one of our arguments for our representatives was that we needed to have fibromyalgia specific research. It's a mixture in here. I mean, I love seeing the novel gene variants in ME/CFS and fibromyalgia. I think these overlapping conditions need to be studied, or these sister illnesses need to definitely be studied more. I will note that there is a lot of chronic pain research in here. So that's why I was clicking around on these things to find out what percentage is really being studied with fibromyalgia compared to chronic pain. And after we go through this, we can have more of a discussion on which way to go when it comes to this. But you can see green light therapy for chronic pain. There's a lot in here that's utilized for pain. And I know it's the dominant symptom within fibromyalgia, but are we really going to get at what's happening with fibromyalgia specifically? So these were different questions we raised, and it gives the budget, it gives the person who, the project who's doing it, the organization that's getting the funding. So you can really dig into the research and understand where it's at, which is great. So this is being transparent. You can reach out to some of these researchers. I've done that personally to ask them if they would like to talk more about how they see fibromyalgia fitting in, especially when it's leaning towards more pain research. And they've been really responsive so far. I think it'd be great to have them on to have more conversations and dive deep into the research. So these are some things that are important to understand. And I invite everyone to really dig through these reports if you're curious, to learn more. And again, it's like, I do want to say that if you are looking at chronic pain, if you are more of a chronic pain advocate, I invite you to take a look at the spending here. So the actual spending for 2019 was 856 million. And they have a category separately for pain research. So it's a lot of, it's a lot of awards and grants being here. There's a lot of research being done. So if you are more on the chronic pain side, or you can take a look at what's being studied. And again, it's important for us as patients to understand, because this is an investment, from our taxes or our funding, or if you know researchers that want to apply for grants, or you're seeing a gap that needs to be taken care of. definitely do your research when it comes to this and understand and they have this full website that you can look at. So the NIH budget and spending, categorical spending, the data book. So it's all here to kind of do, and they have lists of awards and grants for you to just figure out and do more research and ask questions. And you are allowed to do that and understand what's happening. So that's sort of covers what I wanted to talk about for that piece of the research. And I think knowing what is happening is important and where we need to go from there. So that's the big question of research and understanding fibromyalgia. What's next? Where do we need to go from there? How do we be more inclusive with it? And I think at a later point in time, we should definitely have someone like Estella come on and talk about clinical trials and research and diversity with them, and making sure research is very diverse in different things in communities of color, and figuring out how we can involve that in the research component, not only with the researchers, but making sure the research done with patients and patient involvement is diverse. But that's where the start of it begins, and what research is really missing is a critical conversation that we need to have, and we can't hide from it and assume that it's getting completed. The conversations that we come back to too is with, as you saw from fibromyalgia and where the money is being spent, it's not specifically, all of it is not specifically for fibromyalgia. And I think this is an important conversation to have from where we were at the National Pain Strategy. And it's, with pain and understanding pain, and it's definitely important. But when we're talking about fibromyalgia and pain itself, pain being a symptom and a very dominant symptom of fibromyalgia and a complex symptom of fibromyalgia with widespread chronic pain. But when we just focus on one of those symptoms, are we really getting at the root cause of fibromyalgia? And where is the research to understand the causes of fibromyalgia? Because is it the pain itself that we keep focusing on, the pain itself causing the brain fog, fibro fog, the unrefreshed sleep, the fatigue component, or is it something else? Is it the central nervous disorder? Is something causing the central nervous system to go haywire? So this is where research comes in to look at the causes. And I think sometimes when we're taking the money just to look at pain, again, we're just looking at a symptom rather than looking at behind the scenes, the causes. And when we take that apart, so they're doing a lot of research to figure out pain and pain treatment. We've been down this historically with fibromyalgia, looking at one sort of mechanism that will treat that symptom in fibromyalgia, but it doesn't work for everyone. So what are we going to do to work backwards to figure it out? And these are healthy conversations we need to have when it comes to causes. So say it's physical injury, you're in a car accident, and that happens with fibromyalgia. Now, maybe the pain treatment modalities that they're doing research on could significantly help you with all the structural damage, the nerve damage that took place in a physical type of injury. But if we look at some of the emotional trauma, or maybe the viral infections that spark all of potentially fibromyalgia, have you ruled out Lyme conditions? You have a reactivation, Lyme disease. Have you ruled that out? You have a reactivation of a viral component that keeps happening. Then is that pain-specific research going to still apply to one of the causes of fibromyalgia? Now, with all of those, even physical injury, emotional trauma, a viral reactivation, some people swear that they had the flu, they got really sick, and then they started getting fibromyalgia. So with all of those, what makes us unique in actually getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia compared to other people that may have had that and they don't end up getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia? So is there a genetic component to this? Are there biomarkers that we can research for that? Is there some component of mitochondrial dysfunction? How is the family related? Again, going back to genetics and all that. Is there nutritional deficiencies, low vitamin D? How does gut health play a factor in it? So if all of these things, were you primed and ready at that time, and that stressor to sort of send you over into fibromyalgia. And this is the type of research that we need to find in order to get at the cause of what's happening with fibromyalgia and not just one symptom. So the question that I would love to just sort of leave you with in some of this and really try to remember is, should we be spending more time, more financial resources from the NIH to study fibromyalgia and all its complexities in order to help chronic pain? And they've seen the difference between chronic lower back pain or chronic back pain with fibromyalgia. There are studies that show that treatments that are helping people who have chronic back pain that are effective in what they're figuring out for the chronic pain treatments, but when it gets applied to fibromyalgia, it's not as effective. So maybe we should possibly go in the reverse. Let's spend a lot more time studying fibromyalgia, and then we can help with all of that research and understanding what's happening with its complexities. Why is there so much unrefreshed sleep in coordination with pain? Gut health, like IBS, why do a lot of us have any of those gut systems? And then work our way backwards to help the other communities as well. Because pain is, and chronic pain falls within other autoimmune conditions too. And I think we need to take a look at what the other communities are doing and how they're fighting. And I commend a lot of them too. MECFS keeps fighting forward. And I love the work that they're doing on research and advocacy. Lupus is doing an amazing job. Lupus Research Alliance with research and advocacy. The EDS Society has put together some great research and also medical training for their providers. So let's take a look at what they're focused on fibromyalgia. And we need to focus on fibromyalgia, which is tough because I think the shift a long time ago in 2013, and I would love people to comment on this, seemed like the National Pain Strategy came out. This was a way to actually get more funding for fibromyalgia, which I understand that strategy for, but it seems like the shift was, okay, we're going to talk about chronic pain, but fibromyalgia became the side conversation. And now from the research, it looks like chronic pain research is getting funded from the fibromyalgia budget. So is this something where we need to do the reverse to help people in chronic pain and the complexities of chronic pain? These are discussions we need to have on where we're going forward, because I know some people feel that fibromyalgia should just be dropped under the umbrella of chronic pain and be left alone under there. And so that could be a potential shift why the budget for fibromyalgia is decreasing. And this is what we figured out going to Capitol Hill. There are some people that have advocated for fibromyalgia to fall under the category of just chronic pain. So that chronic pain research would then just cover fibromyalgia as well, we think, if people advocated for it, but the separate budget for fibromyalgia itself would go away and it would be moved under chronic pain. So talk about this. Like, is that the way to get to the truth of what fibromyalgia is? And these are important conversations to have. I did want to get back to, I know I'm jumping around a lot. It's not what I intended to do, but it's really serious for us to get at the research. Because again, it's not enough just for us to post on social media that we want the cure. We're going to have to do the work for it. And I think even I assumed the work was getting done behind the scenes. And it was a big reality check to find out what was actually happening and what was not happening for fibromyalgia. And I've been really sad and disappointed about it, but I've had to take a leap forward, and we're going to have to do this work. We're going to have to dig in, do the work, remind the NIH how important fibromyalgia is, and really focus on fibromyalgia. Let me see if I can share another article by Court Johnson for you with Health Rising. He just, I can't thank him enough for putting together all of this research for us in these blogs, because I've just been reading it and digging in, and each link he provides has been an incredible resource for it. So please definitely go check out his blog. And here it is with, again, another screenshot. I'm going to share the link for you. And I'll put all these links in the description so it's organized if you have any questions. please feel free to comment. So 10 ways to prove that fibromyalgia is a real and serious disease. I cannot tell you how baffled I am is that we still are having this conversation in 2020. It just is really hard to wrap my head around it. But he does a great job with this. Again, he breaks it down. So we need to look at these individual categories. I would love to see the end of this conversation. And it keeps coming up in scientific research too. So he cites the 2016 journal, Not the Last Word, Fibromyalgia is Real. We're still getting this question asked. So how do we change this? We know that fibromyalgia is real. And I encourage you to take a look at this blog, go through and read it. Very painful. And these are the points that we are taking apart with the representatives. And this is a good reminder if you are having conversations with your representatives, from assembly members to Congress to senators, is to remember to bring up this point. Because one thing I noticed is in some of our conversations, if people really wanted to emphasize the chronic pain part of it, it's that part has been politicized too much, and we have to come together as a community to strategize what that looks like. Because what we found from the different groups that were talking to our representatives was that it was a different point. So what we had to talk about was neuroinflammation. We had to talk about brain health. We had to talk about all of these other aspects, the widespread symptoms. So it's not just pain. We're talking about the fatigue aspects. And I know that I really focused on this brain fog. Like, do we have the research for fibro fog? Do we understand cognition and what plays a factor in it? We talked about unrefreshed sleep. So we brought up quality of life. That is on the CDC website. So we quoted their own government website with quality of life. So we went so further than just talking about one symptom of fibromyalgia, because people are incredibly impacted in quality of life. And this is a big thing, and how disabling it is. And Court actually references this in this blog that I shared, and you can follow along and read it. But he just doesn't understand how this could be even considered a fake disease. And he even quotes one of the studies in here. It's a 325-person study found that over 50% of fibromyalgia patients were either on sick leave or not working, and that 23% had some degree of permanent work disability pension. So these are the costs and the highest unemployment rate. And then he goes through, it's not easy to treat. So these are some things that we talked about, and these are great points. Like, I definitely go to this blog, print it out, take the time, or, reference it, look at these points so that you can have healthy conversations with your doctor, with your representatives, with your family, because he spells it out, and the high comorbid disease rate. So this was another important thing. And how fibromyalgia makes other diseases worse. He talks about the high economic costs. This has been shown in research studies too. So we can really, really bring this up. And this is what we did at Capitol Hill. And especially this one, the economic aspects of fibromyalgia was really important. And in that study, it states that the mean annual direct medical cost of fibromyalgia ranges from over $2,000 to $10,000 or more. And that doesn't include costs to lost productivity and disability, which could make it 3 to 4 times higher. So these are the statistics that we brought up with our representatives to change the conversation. It almost felt like we were reinventing fibromyalgia and I'm going to say remarketing it, because it's been marketed in such a way that we had to really differentiate the statement and focus on different aspects for our representative to understand, especially with quality of life and economic burden and the degree of what's happening. So these are takeaways to definitely learn from in our fight with fibromyalgia. So I really hope everyone out there will learn from the research that's being done. We can see the gaps and have healthy conversations about how to move forward. I appreciate your time. I see, hey, so everybody out there who's posting comments, I'm trying to focus on the research. So I will get back to everyone with the lovely comments. Thank you again for taking the time to watch on this Sunday. We will have more updates for you soon, and especially when it comes, if you love talking about research, please send me a message, because this is a big thing for me, and it's important, and how we need to get more research, and not only for just finding better treatments, but also training our medical providers. They need to have research-based information, evidence-based research, in order to create curriculum that they're going to be able to use to educate providers, and we need this. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I will talk to you later. Bye.